People think betrayal arrives like a crash glass, sirens, something you can point to and say, that's when it broke. Mine came like a draft under a door I kept meaning to fix. My name is Daniel Hart. I'm 41 and manage facilities for a school district that still uses paper attendance and a boiler that predates 3 principals. I know how to make old things last. Bleed radiators, reseat valves, coax reluctant fluorescents to sputter back to life. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the classrooms warm and the lights on. For 11 years, I've been married to Mara, who teaches art at a nonprofit downtown. Kids who don't get enough of it in school come on Saturdays and smear color into something like hope. We own a 2-bedroom in a suburb that pretends it's a town. There's a maple that dumps its entire personality on our lawn every October and a ceramic robin on the kitchen windowsill Mara swears brings luck. If you asked me a year ago what our marriage felt like, I would have said, reliable. Dinner at the table, shoes in the hall, the small good rituals that add up to a life. We argued in sensible voices about stupid things, the price of raspberries, whether the thermostat should be a democracy, how many mugs 2 people need. We had bite-sized dreams, a deck next summer, a trip that wasn't to visit family, unloading the storage unit we never talk about. I thought loving someone meant learning their gravity and choosing to orbit. The first wrong thing was a text preview. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because Tuesdays are copy paper days. I was chalky with it. I came home to the smell of garlic and a playlist of songs that had rotated in our kitchen for years. Mara's phone buzzed on the counter, face up. I wasn't looking for anything, just reaching for salt, when the preview flashed. Can't stop thinking about your hand on my sleeve. 8 p.m. L. The message arrived like a draft, small, insistent, easy to misinterpret if you want to. The kind of sentence that could be nothing if you decide it is. Mara didn't see me see it. She stirred the sauce and told me about a kid who painted a sky entirely yellow on purpose. He said the blue made him sad, she told me, and smiled, like sometimes sadness looks like a weather report you can change. I didn't say a word that night. I told myself L stood for Lisa, the new program coordinator, whose voice had a cheerfulness I never fully believed. I told myself hand on my sleeve could be a way of saying, helped me reach the tape. I told myself stories because they were cheaper than asking. 2 days later, I found a ticket stub in the dryer, a movie at the little theater we like. The showtime, 8:05 p.m. She hadn't mentioned a movie. When I asked how her evening with the team went, Mara said, fine, we did planning. The lie didn't jump out of her mouth and run around the room. It just sat there, small and neat, like it had been practicing. I didn't follow her. Not then. I installed security cameras outside after a package went missing on our street and told myself checking their logs wasn't surveillance if the cameras belonged to me. In the app's history, I saw us come and go, the headlight sweep of our compact at dusk. On 3 nights when she said she had late meetings, a different car, a black Audi with a dent on the rear quarter, pulled up 2 houses down. No one got out. Our porch light haloed nothing. 20 minutes later, Mara's figure crossed our lawn, fast, shoulders hugged to her ears. The Audi drifted past, slow, polite, leaving no reason to be mad at it. "Who's L?" I asked her on a Saturday morning when the house felt trustworthy. Sun through blinds, coffee in the ugly mug, the robin tilting its head at nothing. She pretended to mishear. "Who's what?" "L. The person who can't stop thinking about your hand." Mara's face went through 3 expressions I didn't catch in time to name. Then she laughed, a little too loud. "Layla," she said. She's dramatic. Keeps texting everyone about grant deadlines, making it feel like a romance. "You went to a movie," I said. "You didn't say." "We had extra tickets." She rinsed the mug and set it in the rack at an angle no person with intact wrists would choose. It felt like a thing you didn't need to micromanage. I don't want to micromanage, I said. I want to not feel stupid. She turned, leaned on the counter, crossed her arms. Do you know how insulting it is to have to submit an itinerary for existing? I'm asking for basic honesty, not a time card. She kissed my cheek with precision, like a stamp. I love you, she said, and the sentence was both real and insufficient. We did the thing couples do when a hairline crack appears. We poured affection into it like grout and hoped the weight wouldn't make it worse. We bought a plant we didn't need and named it Gary. We went for a walk holding hands like teenagers practicing. I told myself the draft was just winter's way of finding us. The second wrong thing was smell. Mara started wearing a perfume I didn't recognize, amber and something sharp, toffee burned almost black. She said a donor gifted it to the staff at Christmas, which sounded like the kind of weirdly generous thing donors do. But it hung on her scarf when she forgot it, and it hung in our bedroom after she showered, and it clung to my hoodie when she borrowed it and gave it back. Scent isn't proof, I told myself. It's memory practicing. The cameras kept collecting their polite little rectangles of time. One Wednesday, the Audi didn't park 2 houses down. It parked across the street, lights off. I watched from the blind upstairs like someone who no longer believes his windows are for light. A man got out and stood under the maple, careful to stay in shadow. He wasn't tall. He had that careful neatness of certain men who never let their shirts discover their own shape. When Mara stepped onto our porch, he didn't move forward like a movie man would. He lifted a hand to shoulder-height small wave, private signal. She crossed, fast, and they stood close enough to count breaths, not touching. They spoke low. Twice he glanced at our window like he knew I would be there. I went down and opened the door. No shouting, no ugly scene, just a man's face in the kind of light where faces choose who to be. Hi, I said. Mara's shoulders squared like a teacher about to remove a kid's phone. This is Leo, she said. He volunteers. Leo offered a hand he must have practiced in a mirror firm, but not aggressive, exactly 3 shakes. Mr. Hart, he said. Daniel, I corrected. Daniel, he repeated, and made it sound like a name that could be improved. What do you need at 9:30 on my lawn? I asked. This is my fault, Mara cut in. He was dropping a binder, the curriculum for Saturday. I forgot to tell you. That binder, I said, must be invisible. Leo's smile didn't move his eyes. We'll go, he said, to me and also not to me. After he left, we did another round of normal. She poured me wine we didn't want. I pretended to taste notes. We managed to climb into bed and lie there like a photo of sleep. In the morning, I wrote Leo's plate down and ran it through a registry site I had to pay for, because apparently I'm a man who pays for things like that now. The name came back as Leonard Carr, the address as a nearby condo complex, the occupation as consultant, which is a word that hides things the way fog hides fences. I didn't tell Mara. I told myself telling her would make me someone I didn't like, which was true, and also that not telling her would make me someone I liked, which was not. The week after our laptop signed her out of a calendar she forgets to log out of. When I clicked the top corner and her little icon didn't appear, I saw a different account had been there recently, L. Marlowe, not Leo's Marlowe. I clicked instinctively and hit a wall. It asked for a password I didn't have. I shut it. Stared at Gary until he looked ashamed to be photosynthesizing in a house like this. That night she said, Alicia's birthday is Friday. You're invited if you want. Who's Alicia? The ceramicist who always talks about smoke. Oh, I said, like air. I didn't go. I told her I had boiler work. At 9, I drove to the ceramics place anyway and idled in the dark like a stereotype. I watched women in paint-smeared aprons hug the humidity out of the air and a few men who looked like they owned exactly 3 shirts do an awkward sway to a playlist of the 90s. I didn't see Leo. I almost laughed at myself for how ridiculous the suspicion felt. Then, at 10:08, Mara slipped out the side door with her coat in her hands and walked to the corner. Not fast, not sneaky like someone going to meet a ride. The black Audi rolled up. Leo opened the passenger door without getting out. She slid in. The car drifted off the curb and merged with the kind of night that always has room for one more bad idea. I followed. Not close enough to lose what I had left of myself, but close enough to keep the tail. They didn't go to a motel because life doesn't like being cinematic when you're ready for it. They went to a diner off Route 19, the kind with pie that's better than it looks and lights that are too honest. Through the glass, I watched them take a booth in back, her face tilted up like when she listens to kids explain why a tree needs pink. He talked. She touched his sleeve when he made a joke that was probably kind, but not funny. When the check came, she paid. He tried to stop her and didn't. I drove home and sat in the driveway and didn't turn the engine off until the catalytic converter made a smell I should have been embarrassed by. She came in at midnight with hair that smelled like diner and perfume and said, "Alicia sends you a slice of key lime," and held up a clamshell. We ate it at the counter with 2 forks, like a momentary truce in a war no one wanted to admit existed. "Do you love him?" I asked, because some questions are a way to punish yourself. She didn't answer. She put her fork down carefully. "I need to sleep," she said. "We need to talk. I can't talk to the version of you that followed me. Then talk to the version you married." "That's who I'm trying to find," she said, and went to bed. We tried therapy. Of course we did. The counselor had a rock fountain that made a sound like a bathroom you can't find. She said words like repair and attunement, and gave us a worksheet about bids for connection. "I bid by asking about your day," Mara said sweetly, reading from her page like a student who wanted the grade. "You respond by saying you're tired." "I'm tired because I get up at 5 to fix the boilers that keep kids from wearing gloves in math class," I said. It sounded noble in my mouth and petty when it hit the air. The counselor asked about needs. Mara said she needed to feel looked at in the way people mean when they don't mean looked at. I said I needed to feel trusted. The counselor nodded like both were plausible. We left holding hands like a brand new task. We were good for 3 weeks. We made a list of reasons we were not going to make lists about each other. I deleted the plate lookup site. She logged out of El Marlo on the laptop and didn't log back in where I could see. We kissed more often. We kissed sometimes in the middle of a sentence to change what the sentence meant. Then her mother had a surgery and we fell back into old gravity. Mara slept on an air mattress in that dim room with the recliner that thinks it's a bed and texts that arrived at 11:58 p.m. with a tenderness I hadn't seen in months. When she came home, she smelled like hospital and relief, and I didn't ask what else. We made spaghetti with too much crushed red pepper and ate standing up. She looked at me over the pot like someone about to confess something brave. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Okay." "I told Leo we have to stop." The air showed me how large it was. "Okay," I said. "It wasn't what you think," she added quickly, generously, as if the charity would make me less angry when I found out in a different way. It was. Attention. The kind that doesn't ask who's going to take out the trash. I ask who's going to take out the trash because the trash exists. "I know," she said, and put her hand on my chest. "I'm sorry. I'm here." I believed her. Call me stupid. I believed her. That night she fell asleep with her face in my neck like we were people who slept like that all the time. I watched the ceiling and promised the ceiling I would let this be the line where the past lives. A week later, the Audi stopped on our street again. I know because after you start watching, stopping hurts more than looking. He didn't get out. She didn't go to him. He idled there 2 minutes, which is 1 minute longer than a person idles when deciding. Then he left. The next day, I saw the 2 of them at a farmer's market by accident. My accident, for which my punishment was to learn that there are a million versions of humiliation. He stood by the plums with a canvas bag. She browsed cilantro with a face that looked like whatever she needed it to. I watched from behind a stack of crates like the worst kind of spy. He didn't touch her. He didn't even look at her. He noticed me. He came over like a guy you chatted with once at a barbecue. "You have to decide," he said. "Get away from me," I said. "You can both keep pretending," he said mildly, "or you can accept that pretending is the marriage now." I wanted to break his mouth. I said, "This was an emotional affair, right? That's the script? I forgive, she tries, you go." He tilted his head. "If it helps you, use the script, but be careful which story you choose. Some of them are harder to exit than the reality." He walked back to the plums. Mara stood by the cilantro and took a photo of Sun on a table and laughed at something a vendor said. I left without buying anything because apparently pettiness can be principled. There's a moment in every slow-breaking thing when you realize it's not going to be dramatic. The brokenness will be administrated. It'll arrive in small forms and polite signatures and schedules. In our case, it was a Monday. Mara said she needed a week at her sister's lake place to write a curriculum proposal and breathe a different air. "You're welcome," she added, "but I know you can't take time off now." It was true. The district was replacing 2 roofs enough to bankrupt a small country. I helped her pack without accusing the suitcase of crimes. She kissed me long at the door, the way someone kisses a version of you they're not sure will be home by the time they get back. "Please water Gary," she said. "He takes it personally." For 6 days, she texted photos of the lake a surface, pretending to be a sky of her knees and a book and a mug with a chip. She sent one I stared at too hard, her hand on a coffee sleeve, a thumb near a ring I bought when we were broke. In the background, barely, the blurred outline of a man's shoulder. I typed, "Is that?" and deleted that, and asked, "How's the weather?" and she replied, "Good," and this is how adults choose the versions of pain they can survive. On the 7th day, she wrote, "Heading home tomorrow, and I cleaned the house like that could be a way to help." I changed the sheet. I put the lucky robin on a different part of the sill to see if luck had a radius. I stood in the doorway of the room we called the office because room with unpacked boxes didn't make us people we wanted to be. I found, under a stack of sketchpads, a phone. Not her phone, the second one. Worst cliché in a story like this. I knew the passcode because secrets always share closets with habits. I told myself not to open it, and then I opened it. Because the human mind writes 1,000 rules and the hands pretend to be a different species. The messages didn't start recent. They went back 9 months, a slow escalation from "thanks for staying late" to "I miss your brain" to "I miss you" in a foreign tense. There were no nudes. There were no declarations of love on a bridge under fireworks. There were details of days and questions, and flinching attempts at asking for each other's time. There were 3 photos: a sandwich with too much mustard, a painting of a son no kid painted, and a room with a side table I recognized, the lake house. The last message, dated the previous day, was from Mara. "I'm leaving in the morning. I'll talk to him tonight. This is the last time. M." I sat on the edge of our bed and felt something inside me go very quiet so I wouldn't do anything dumb with the volume of my feelings. I put the phone back where it was. I watered Gary. Mara didn't come home the next day. At 8 p.m., she texted, "Car trouble. Staying 1 more night. Don't wait up." At 9:30, I turned on the cameras like I was checking the weather. There is a particular humiliation in finding your own faith dehydrated. At 2:03 a.m., the porch camera pinged motion. I watched the live view and saw nothing but the gentle, unhelpful reality of bugs. At 2:11, the phone rang once and stopped. At 2:15, a car door thudded in the feed and a shadow crossed our lawn, not Leo's. The walk was heavier, the slope different. The figure didn't come to the door. It drifted past, toward the side gate, then out of frame. I didn't go outside. I stood in the kitchen with a butter knife in my hand because apparently I'm a guy whose fight or flight is spreadable. When the sun arrived like a benevolent auditor, I did the only handsome thing I could think of. I baked muffins from a mix. What else do you do when your life is a photo where the subject moved? At 10:12, she texted, "On my way." At 12:40, traffic. At 2:03, a completely normal photo of a completely normal interstate sign you can find with a quick search. At 4:20, she walked in with a tote and a smile too careful to keep, and we did the choreography two people do when they want to survive a day. I read the messages, I said softly, because there should be some grace even in confession. She sat. "I was going to tell you," she said. "I was afraid of the sound your face would make." "I have a face for that?" "It's like you're holding in 1,000 assumptions and waiting for me to choose the one you'll be angriest about." "I don't know how to do this without making it worse," I said. "Then maybe don't do it at the table," she said. "Let's do it somewhere we don't eat." We went to the porch because we don't eat there. She told me that she loved me and she meant it. She told me that she had also loved the way talking to Leo made her feel less like a person who keeps lists, and she meant that too. She told me there was not a specific night to name no hotel room keycard. No anniversary of sin, and she meant it, I think. She told me the lake was a place to say goodbye, and she meant it with the kind of hope that performs forgiveness in advance. "Do you want to stay married to me?" I asked. "Yes," she said, so fast I had to believe the speed. "Then block him," I said. She took her phone out and blocked him in front of me, deliberately. Then she took the second phone out and didn't block him. She set it on the table like a jar she didn't recognize and said, "I hate this thing," and then she put it back in her tote. We were good for 5 days. On the 6th night, someone put an envelope through our mail slot. Inside, a key card from a chain hotel 2 towns over, and a single line penned in a careful, average hand. "When you're ready to be honest with him, room 217. I held it in my palm for a long time like a coin with a burning side. I set it on the counter. I went to bed. In the morning, the key card was gone. Mara's tote was, too. I drove to the hotel because I'm not a saint, and curiosity masquerades as bravery when you put your shoes on quickly. I parked under a light because grown men are superstitious when they're ashamed. I took the stairs because elevators make you feel like the world is helping. I stood in front of 217 and felt my heart do the dumb, generous thing where it thinks keeping time is the same as keeping control. I didn't knock. It's the one thing I can still be proud of in the story I'm telling you. I left the key card on the small metal shelf outside the door, the place where people leave room service trays with ambitious pineapple slices. I went home and fixed a radiator that didn't ask me personal questions. Mara came back that night. She took off her shoes like a person who lives somewhere and kissed me, like a person who doesn't want to pretend. We ate leftovers. We watched a show we didn't talk about. In bed, she reached for my hand under the sheet and put it on her ribs like a map. "Am I the only one?" I asked. "You're the only home," she said, which is, if you think about it, a very specific answer. There isn't a final fight in this story. There's a stack of mail on the counter and 2 toothbrushes in the holder, and a robin that keeps ignoring my attempts to change its view. There's a spreadsheet of costs and a list of project timelines and the district's polite email reminding me that summer doesn't mean pipes get to relax. There's a plant named Gary that is somehow still alive. There are also nights when Mara texts late from a team dinner and my throat pulls tight like a drawstring. There are mornings when the cameras show nothing but the weather and I feel foolish for praying to them. There is a man I might see near the plums who nods like a stranger because that's what we agreed to be. There is the second phone, which I haven't seen in a while, which is not the same as its not existing. We are, if you need a label, reconciling. We do therapy and do not lie to the therapist, which is progress if you consider the bar a snake to be stepped over. We mention hard things quickly so they don't have time to metastasize. We schedule stupidly simple dates and praise each other for enduring them. Sometimes she looks at me with a kind of fragile ferocity I recognize from the first year, and I think, okay, we are pulling this heavy thing together. Sometimes she stares at a blank part of the wall like she's watching a movie only she can see. 2 weeks ago, a package arrived with no return address. Inside, a small jar of paint labeled Naples yellow, the color of the sun a kid might choose when he wants the day to stop being a bully. There was no note. There was a smear on the lid, a fingerprint in a tone that made my chest hurt. Mara said, "That's weird," and put it with her supplies. She hasn't used it yet. I don't ask why. Last night, the porch camera pinged at 1:58 a.m. A figure crossed our yard. Not Leo, not the heavier walk. This one moved like someone who knows how to be looked at, hips angled slightly, steps that announce without asking. The figure paused near the maple and looked up at our window. No wave, then gone. The replay pixelated the face into a mosaic of maybe. At 2:15, the phone rang once. It stopped. The kitchen was a square of blue from the microwave clock. I didn't answer. I made tea with honey because that's what my grandmother used to do when the air was full of unsayable. Mara stirred and said, without opening her eyes, "You're not going to lose me." "I don't know what that means," I said. "It means stay," she whispered. "It means I'm not done choosing you." I lay awake after she fell asleep and thought about the draft under the door and how sometimes you fix it with weather stripping, and sometimes you learn to sleep under another blanket, and sometimes you move the bed. At dawn, I made coffee and watched the robin watch me. I took the jar of Naples yellow off the shelf and turned it in my hand until the light found something inside it I hadn't noticed. I opened it and set it on the table. I don't paint. I don't know what I was asking the color to do. The doorbell rang. I flinched like a kid in a gym with a dodgeball problem. On the mat sat an envelope. No return, again. Inside, a photograph of the two of us on the lake last summer. Mara leaning into me, my hand in her hair. A stranger's reflection caught in the cabin window behind us. On the back, in handwriting so careful it could hide in a stack of forms and never be caught, a line. Honesty is not the same as detail. L. I put it in the drawer with the appliance manuals. I made eggs. I put the jar of yellow back on the shelf. I woke Mara by kissing her shoulder and saying her name in a way that felt like sandpaper. We ate. We didn't mention the envelope. We said what we needed to say to leave for our days as the people our jobs believe in. Before I left, I bent down and felt under the lip of the hall console for the second phone. It wasn't there. I told myself that meant something good. On the driveway, the light hit the maple in a way that made me think of last fall and hands full of leaves and a photo where we looked like prototypes of ourselves. Across the street, a black Audi sat for a moment, then turned the corner and disappeared. Maybe it wasn't his. Maybe it was. I got in my car. I went to work to coax the boiler. I will check the cameras less. I will practice not reading texts I can't unread. I will ask questions in the daytime and let the nighttime keep its teeth to itself. I will be the person who can be stayed with. If you came here for resolution, the clean slam of a gavel, the marching band of closure, I don't have it. What I have is a door that opens and closes, and a draft that sometimes minds its manners and sometimes doesn't. What I have is a wife who kisses me goodbye with intention, and a past that makes faces at me through the kitchen window. What I have is a jar of yellow, the color of a choice I'm not ready to make. Tonight, we'll eat at the table. I'll tell her a story about a kid who taped 2 pencils together to draw parallel lines without a ruler. She'll tell me about a girl who painted a cat with 2 tails and explained that it needed both for balance. We will laugh, and then quiet will come. And in that quiet, I will decide again to stay the length of another cup of tea. Sometimes you fix the draft. Sometimes you learn to live with the wind. Sometimes you open the door and nothing walks in, and sometimes that is enough.